What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Your Overwatch. Hero Pools has hit the community like a truck. I know some of us are still reeling. I know what it feels like to think it's all doom and gloom, but I have come around to be pro the idea. Today, we're continuing the conversation about the hero pool rotation system, which works a little differently in all different places. For Season 21 in Ranked, a few heroes at a time will be targeted to be disabled for competitive play week to week, with Jeff Kaplan and the developers picking out key heroes to try to shape the experience and mix up the meta. In the Overwatch League, they'll be looking at the previous 2 weeks' highest picked heroes and then banning among them randomly 2 DPS, a support, and a tank. These rules are kind of subject to change, but the long and short of this is this system is like an amped up version of hero bans that, although takes strategy away from the individuals, does offer more diversity because the systems of shaking up meta components are outside of your control. Some metas will be broken, some metas will be balanced, but there will guarantee to be different comps at least week to week, even if, worst case scenario, there's one mirror meta best comp per each hero rotation. But no matter what, it'll be somewhat different at least, which is something that we've never had before in Overwatch. And in today's video, we're going to have a discussion with two of my good friends, Nateson and Samito. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion, and if you do, be sure to check out Nateson and Samito's links in the description. They're community members you don't want to miss out on. Go hit them a follow and a subscribe and tell them Your Overwatch sent you. But without further ado, let's hop into the conversation. Lower ranked players never felt like they needed bans or diversifying the meta anyway because it wasn't oppressive to them, and Blizzard is attacking the meta with balance. And they didn't say this explicitly, but what that means is they're not balancing for everyone. They're balancing top down far more severely, probably, right? Like, I'm kind of like translating that.
Which is good.
We think that's good, but it also can have bad side effects if it's done wrong. So for example, I know we all agree on this. If you take a hero like Reaper and you say we're only going to balance Reaper for the high end, well then he's got to be super powered to have a chance to have to compete with people who can hit headshots super easily or have super teamwork like they did in GOATs. And I would say that's an example of bad top-down balancing where they're trying to get a hero that doesn't belong in high tiers into high tiers that has bad ramifications for the low tiers. And I think we all agree on that, right? And we want high skill heroes to be at the high tiers ideally. So hopefully they do that and don't like take some of this too literally, right? With buffing low skill heroes into the high tiers. I want to try to think about this in the ranked perspective as well. Almost universally for high ranks, I think almost no one will hate this unless you either needed the meta to be in a high rank, like if you abuse some easy hero, or if you're not a flexible player, or if lots of things. But I think most high level, especially streamers, right? Playing lots of different stuff is just fun. I am concerned though about how this interacts with the average player because they didn't play meta anyway. I am worried for that casual player. Do you guys have any insight on how you think that's going to be affected, or any worries or counter arguments, any of that?
I'm not worried at all.
Let them burn. Is that your attitude, or
No. I've had more
problem.
No, listen. Right? I've had more IRL friends text me this week saying, "Hey man, Overwatch is finally adding rotations. Like I can play multiple characters. I might get back into the game." I've heard only positive things from a casual audience, especially with quick play being as good as it is. Like quick play is good. Like quick play is good. Like roll queue like made quick play such a great game mode. I think that this will bring more people back to the game than it will hurt. People might not like it at the start who have been playing forever, but like I think this is something that we're really going to warm up to over time, especially a casual audience.
I think that's a really good answer. And if I can add on to that, especially the quick play thing is its own conversation. I bring that up on Twitter every other day, feels like, when I'm replying to people in a debate. Quick play is such a phenomenal experience. Now, I know we're on the same page with that. But when it comes to the casual player, especially if they're not just someone that logs on and only wants to play one specific hero, and if they don't get that hero, they're going to back out of the game. The casual player that just like sit down and chill, they'll play whatever role. This should be the most phenomenal Overwatch experience coming up. The fact that you can just log in and everything's going to be changing constantly. You'll play whatever heroes are available that week. I could not be any more excited for Season 21, and that's because that is me. Like, if you look at my career profile, I know it's the same with you guys. We play literally everyone. Like, it feels whatever the team wants, like, we're happy to play. And I think this meta coming up, shifting every week is going to be so insanely great for the casual player. There's going to be such a small percentage of people that are going to be upset. Like Sam said, I think with time, like, they'll get over it.
Yeah, I really like these answers. And the thing with 222 when it came in, it came so slowly that the community really had a lot of time to think about it. Way more people were against it at the start. Then there was a lot of lead up time before it even came out. And by that time, people were like, yes, please, anything but what we have now, and put it in tomorrow. By that time, it was like a much more well-received change, just based on like the time of people to think of through the ramifications of it. And this severe change, I think people aren't realizing the gift that it's going to be of how much stress gets alleviated. And
yes,
one major point with that is the perception of meta. So important. I think this is fundamentally going to change the way casual players interact with the game. So this is the way I perceive it. In reality, casual players shouldn't think meta applies to them very much. If you actually know how and why to play meta heroes and the required synergies and teammate picks you need. So for example, to me, double shield was meta because Mei. And if you didn't have Mei on your team, or maybe a Reaper or another budget anti-dive answer, Dive would just run past them, right? And people gave me a lot of crap when I was like, Reinhardt's sick against double shield. What I was doing in ranked was destroying teams that weren't playing Mei. And then I had to learn, I'm like, okay, yeah, top level players, they know how to kite and they use Mei, and that's how the meta works. But it's like that answer plus the next little bit on top of it that solidifies these metas. And lower ranked players, they see sort of like a very pinhole view of the meta, and they're just like, well, double shields, we'll just put shields in the way and hopefully not die. But if their enemies were running past them, they would get demolished playing that if they don't have good Mei play, or if Mei's off doing her own thing, lost on a little mission, or if the team doesn't play with and around Mei to cover them. That's the weird thing about metas, right? It's not just the picks, it's also the play styles, it's the teamwork, it's the positioning and how different things cover for each other. And I think the average player gets really trapped in just seeing the heroes getting picked and thinking they have to play those things. Because of this major change, all that's erased. And you basically have to like figure it out on your own, which might feel scary at first, but it'll allow you to actually engage with the game by playing it rather than paint by numbers. What are the top level players picking? And I have to pick the same thing, even when it's not working. Now that you don't have a choice to make the bad decision of being a meta slave when you maybe shouldn't have because you weren't playing it right anyway, then you actually can play more of the game, not less. Now, the less options will be available week to week, technically, but it will let you rotate and experience more things rather than be locked in the meta cage mentality.
The game opens
like
up.
The psychology of wonder of the game is like opened up basically, and it feels more like launch day Overwatch that we've all been trying to get back to, where you feel like it's more about your expression through the game rather than having to follow the flow chart of the meta necessarily. So I hope we're all right in this, and the casual player loves it and didn't know they wanted it, because that would be awesome.
Merry Christmas, baby. Merry Christmas from Jeff. So it might, like you said, Frito, it might seem like there are less options to be picked, but especially in low ranks, you're absolutely right about people picking meta. Like, it's just, there's no such thing. Like, if you can't do the necessities of the meta, Mei is what made Double Shield last meta. The only reason that comp worked was because of Mei and Orisa's Fortify, okay? Other than that, launch day Overwatch felt so good is because there were very few oppressive heroes in it, and the game felt very open. Like, I feel like with this and the game and the patch now, the map and the environment around me as a player is much more open to the individual decisions that I make. Does that make sense? I feel like the weights have been dropped, Rock Lee versus Gara style, if that makes sense, on everyone's experience in ranked. That's why I'm very excited for this, and I think you're absolutely right. Like, everybody, don't pick what you want. Obviously, there are good situations for every hero. I'm not saying, throw the game, right? But you will have way more options available to you. So make sure you capitalize on them.
And it's in this aspect that we hope hero pools work better than bans would have. Because if we had bans, it is true that top meta heroes would be disproportionately banned out for extended periods of time, which does hurt casual players that want to see those heroes get played or pick them themselves. Whereas hero pools hopefully works at both ends of the spectrum, giving variety to everybody, because I think most players at all tiers want it. It's most drastically needed at higher tiers, but on the whole, the majority of players like diverse gameplay in Overwatch. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about high-end gameplay. And despite some doomsday complaints from coaches and pros that were used to the old version of mastering a patch, finding that meta comp and optimizing it and grinding it to perfection, whereas the old format of Overwatch was about maxing out that patch meta, the new one will be like racing to that in a week. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're constantly in that scrim phase where people are figuring out the game, and that's always been the phase everyone likes.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone likes those phases, right? I've always been mad because I never get to see those scrims, right? I have to ask pros, I have to talk to Samito and like, what are people doing in scrims? And then by the time we get to like the actual competitive matches, it's Resident Sleeper, the same 6 heroes getting played. I'm like, no, why couldn't we get the scrims on stage? Just stop breaking the game. Stop getting so good at these patches, okay? We want to see these things happen in real time. The concern though, which I know Sam's going to get into, is that each hero pool rotation will have its own meta anyway. That's like kind of obvious. But I think the real trick here is in between these rotations is balance coming in time to sort of tweak those things so it's not so obvious. Very clearly, let's just say the rushdown comp that you were talking about with that I think I just desperately do not want to ever see. I'm so sick of seeing Goatsy style plays that run at you. I'm so sick of it. I don't want that anymore. Can we play the shooter game? Luckily with hero pools, they can like just take Moira out and all of a sudden there really isn't a rushdown healer that keeps those alive as easily as Moira though. I mean, like it's not as easy though. Okay, go ahead.
I hate to say it, Frito. I hate to say it.
Lucio Brig, is that?
I hate to say it. Listen, this is the last thing I wanted to say. Lucio Brig is pretty good. like if you banned Moira, it wouldn't stop Rush. If you want to stop Rush, you need to ban Lucio. Like that's the only way. There are 3 main styles of comps that we've seen over the past 3 years of Overwatch, and they just get substituted out with different characters. Like for example, like with Dive, you used to see Winston, but now you see Ball, right? You have Dive comps, Rush comps, Goats, Brawl that we saw, Doomfist Reaper. People said that was Bunker. It wasn't Bunker, it was Rush. And then you have Poke comps, like the previous meta we saw, Orisa Sigma, Bap Zen, right? There's 1 or 2 key heroes in each of those compositions that kind of that allows that comp to be good against others. And for example, if you were to ban a Reaper, or to ban, let's say you ban Moira, like you said, to me, based off how this patch has felt, teams who already are running Lucio Brig are going to just, substitute the Brig for the Moira, and it wouldn't change anything. The crux of Rush comps is Lucio, because you need the speed. Is he overpowered? No. Are the heroes that allow that comp to be run kind of too strong in terms of Brig Moira? Yes. I think if Ana was played, you would see more diversity. Like you might be able to play dive into it because Ana's actually diveable, right? Like she's vulnerable as a kit. Brig and Moira just have these get out of jail free cards and inherent value on them. The same as May and Reaper, which is what I personally think needs to be nerfed about these characters if you want to see the meta widen up. Like these heroes have a free, like get out of the mistake free card. If that makes sense. Like they can get out of any mistake that's made. And the value of that in a fight, especially in Rush, is so high. So until that gets changed, I don't think we'll see diversity in Rush comps. But yeah, no. You'd be surprised, man. I think it'll depend on what heroes Blizzard are rotating out to change up the meta per week. Like what are they going to target?
There's 2 ways they're doing it. One slightly more controversial than the other, where in ranked, week to week, Jeff's picking. It's like Jeff's choice, basically, right? It's Jeff's choice. And of course, there's the hilarious meme where in the forum post talking about bans, he's like, we don't want you to ban the heroes you want to shape your play experience. We'll do that for you, which is kind of a bit of a hilarious meme, okay? But I'm not going to go too hard on Jeff for that because I know what he means. And as someone who gets his words twisted onto him constantly out of context, I try not to do that to other people. But the Overwatch League, though, is going to take 1 support, 1 tank, 2 damage of those top picks. Now, random gets people really nervous, but it's also random among what likely will be a very small subset of picks anyway, because based on how we know metas work in Overwatch, so few dominate the pick rates that what might happen is that we'll just alternate different metas week to week unless patches come in, which is my assumption is how this is going to play out, where, so sure, maybe, let's say Sam's right and Rushdown dominates and there's no way to get rid of it. Even like the tier 2 Rushdown is still better than whatever other comp you might say would counter it. I don't know if I fully agree. I wonder if Pharaoh or Doomfist might be able to beat Lucio Brig, but well, that remains to be seen. Let's just say that's the case. Maybe Double Barrier comes back the next week But in between that time, if we see like a Moira nerf, Lucio, it's not nerf Lucio, please, but whatever nerfs would come through to try to stop that from happening again on the next rotation, we may see a constant rotation of these different heroes and different comps getting played, and also the heroes that fit in those comps getting swapped out as well. The major archetypes likely aren't going to change. This will cause major chaos in both environments, both in ranked. I think we're going to see massive SR fluctuations in the Overwatch League. It's going to definitely bone, I would say, at least 1 to 5 teams, especially the bubble teams. Like if you're a really bad team, probably doesn't matter. If you're the best teams in the world, probably you'll still be able to adjust. But there's definitely going to be times where a key playoff match that you need to win, you get an unlucky draw of hero pools against the team that's good on those heroes, and then upset happens. That stuff's definitely going to happen. But I also think, and this is my argument that kind of turned me towards this being okay, is the previous version of what we had with this in the meta lottery was far worse. Long periods of one meta benefit like certain subsets of teams far too much, whereas if we're constantly in flux and we're constantly changing, that's almost more Overwatch to me. It's a lower, perhaps, mastery of those specific metas, but nobody really cared about mastering GOATs. Like, only coaches did, and maybe pro players did a bit, but nobody really gave two hoots about how you changed your Zarya bubble usage and your amp timing and your pathing. And we wanted to see things that weren't GOATs, okay? That's what fans wanted to see. And so in some ways, oddly enough, I feel like this chaos is more stable and more Overwatch than what we've had before. What we had before was like pros breaking the game and defying the basic philosophy of what the game was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be about flexing and counterpicking. That's never been the case. And finally, it kind of will. And at worst, it will be like maybe sub comps become meta in these different ban rotations, but I think teams will I'm more confident that they'll try different stuff more regularly. I don't know if we're going to get easy mirrors on those frequently at the OWL level, especially when you have some superstar players like who are you on Genji for the new XL, or side players Widow, or whoever, right?
Genji, bro, stop. No,
I think they will try to use some of these heroes. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think in rotations where it seems pickable, where you have key bans that put them into place, I think that's the dream anyway. Okay, if it doesn't work, then we'll have this conversation again in like 2 months or whatever it is. Okay,
it's not possible for Genji. It's not possible for Genji. Other heroes, I agree. Genji is just like you can't ban Brig and Moira on the same week, so that wouldn't matter. The question we have to ask, like as a community, is here's where I agree with you, Frito, where this is better. For entertainment value, which is what Overwatch League as a product is, right? Its goal is to entertain people who love the game, people who want to watch esports. It's supposed to be entertaining. To that extent, I think the system is really, really good. Like, you will get variety. You will get, upsets. You will get a more interesting product to watch. These bans will for sure make variety, and it will bring more upsets. Teams will have less time to master things, right? So from a viewer's perspective, this could be really, really good, especially if Blizzard target the correct heroes for the bans. We could see completely different compositions one week to the next, right? Which I think is really, really interesting from a spectator's point of view. But from a player's point of view, right? We just finished the North American Contenders seeding tournament, right? I'm going to give an example of something that just happened. We played on the previous pack, so it was Bap Zen, Mei Hanzo versus Sigma. Let's take Second Wind as a team, for example. They were definitely a top half team, but I wouldn't say that they were going to be able to beat Atlanta, Sky Foxes, right? These top teams. But with 2 weeks, 3 weeks left, in the seeding tournament, they figured out their own style of the meta, sending their Mei on off angles with their Sigma, and it worked really, really well, to the point where they finished second. They beat Atlanta Academy, they beat Sky Foxes, and they took the only map off of Team Envy, Dallas Fuel's Academy team, in the entire tournament, right? So from a player and coaching standpoint, it can be very concerning. And the question is, which do we value more? To me, from an outsider looking in, I think we do have to value the experience of the viewer, because we are in the entertainment industry. I do hope they find a better way, though, to let teams know in advance. It might not need to be weekly for the pro scene. I think for ranked, it's great, right? I think this is great for ranked. But if we can find a better way to implement it into the pro scene so teams get a little bit more practice time it could be really, really interesting. I think that's the best way to go personally.
Do you think that it is important though, however, to whatever you watch on Overwatch League, you should be able to do that in the game right now as well? Like whatever the Overwatch League bans is, that should be like what's happening in game as well. I think the best way to do it would be make sure that the teams are informed ahead of time. Okay, this is what we're doing this week. This is what we're doing the week after. This is gonna be the hero pool week after. So I'm a very casual Overwatch League viewer. And I know that if I'm watching the Overwatch League teams and the players play certain comps, I want to go try that in comp myself. And so I think there would be a disconnect if they didn't do that, if they worked at some other system. So like Overwatch League is a month ban versus ranked is a week ban. Like I think they should make sure that it's always the same so that you can go play what you're watching. And entertainment is completely like the number one goal here, I think, to make the broadcast, make the whole experience as fun as possible. I like the chaotic nature of, okay, I'm going to see a different thing every single week from Overwatch League. I'm not going to watch them play goats for the 15th time, and we're going to watch the same heroes doing the same things on the same maps for the 20th time. Like, I like the idea of that chaosy. And that gets back to kind of like what Jeff was talking about. But he was kind of hinting towards it in the forum post. He's using words like chaotic, and not that this has to do with it, but the FPS feel. I like this direction of where the game's heading overall. And I just really hope Overwatch League is like keeping the same bans as ladder.
So here's what we were told. Okay, you want it to be the same. I agree, it'd be nice if it was the same, but we were told that Contenders is not going to be the same as OWL. So our bans are going to be different from their bans, which is interesting. Mostly because
Isn't that confusing?
I mean,
Is it based on your meta then? Like, is it based on your top picks in Contenders?
I don't know, dude.
Or is Jeff pick?
I don't know, man. I wish I could tell you, but
Jeff Roulette.
Jeff Roulette, yeah. So obviously they're going to try to keep it as close to OWL as possible, but with our scheduling, like here's what I think they should do. I think Blizzard should sit down 2 months in advance and say they shouldn't get the bans a bye week off the previous week's stats, okay? As of right now, we know what heroes, at least the pros do. I'm not sure if the dev team does. I'm sure they do. We know what heroes can enforce a certain style of play. If you study Overwatch for the past 3 years, you can learn this, right? Obviously, rush comps are only viable with Lucio, okay? Like otherwise, you wouldn't be able to rush something down, right? It might be better to play the poke if Lucio's not enabled, right? What else? Dive is only playable with characters like Ball and Diva. So if you ban one of those, maybe Dive would lose its viability for a week. We already know these things. It'd be cool if there was an existing schedule pre-planned before the season so that coaches from the Overwatch League could see the stat and see like what strats they would need to make months in advance, because they're already on limited practice time because of traveling. They'll only be able to script these patches maybe like 3 days a week, right? It's already not optimal. So I think being able to give these teams as much prep as possible, giving Contenders as much prep as possible, and having that schedule be public on Ranked would allow all of those things to be in sync. And to top that off, like you said, Nate, as a casual viewer experience, you can go see what's on the live game right now. I think that's the best way we can do it. It's very interesting that Contenders, I'm not exactly sure why Contenders is going to be different from OWL, probably scheduling. But other than that, it is a big deal in Contenders because that means the top Contenders teams wouldn't be able to scrim OWL teams. Or they wouldn't want to because they couldn't play their hero pools, right? So all more chaos. I mean, listen, I'm all for the direction we're going. I think it's great. I think we need to really fine-tune the method, though, and I do believe the team is going to get there.